In general, I've tried to focus my mind's energy and just, employing the best techniques for our patients, doing the best job, and be as undistracted as possible.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's special guest is Dr. John Vartanian. He's a facial and reconstructive surgeon in private practice in Los Angeles, California for the past 20 years. Now, Dr. Vartanian completed his residency in head and neck surgery and internship in general surgery, both at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and completed a UCLA affiliated fellowship in Beverly Hills, California. Dr. Vartanian teaches physicians, and he also lectures nationally and publishes on facial plastic surgery topics. And he's helped develop a virtual reality model of the nose and face, which is used to teach nasal anatomy. Now, Dr. Vartanian offers his services pro bono for domestic abuse and facial trauma, as well as pro bono missions. Dr. Vartanian, welcome to Beauty and the Biz.
Well, thanks for having me. And after years of seeing you at various meetings and social events and having viewed a number of your podcasts, it's an honor for me to be on your podcast. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I feel like I've known you forever. We have been on this circuit. You do a lot of speaking and skiing, by the way, but we'll talk about that later. So anyway, let's talk about facial plastic surgery. Why that and not orthopedics?
Great question. So when I was in med school, my original goal was to become a cardiac surgeon or a cardiologist because I found cardiac physiology so beautiful. But then I got exposed to a number of friends and family who were rhinoplasty surgeons. And the first time I saw a rhinoplasty being performed, I was just taken aback. Like it was almost like witchcraft. It was magical. And at that point, a light bulb went in my, I decided that's what I was going to do. And if you want to mess with the nose and the face, the most technical approach is to go through an otolaryngology head and neck surgery training and then do a fellowship in facial plastic surgery. And so that became my life's goal mid med school.
Gotcha. And then what was the journey from, let's say, fellowship to private practice? I'm sure it wasn't a straight line.
Yeah, so I did my medical school and residency in Chicago, and even though I'm from Los Angeles originally, and so I was gone for 9 years, so I came back for my fellowship, and it just happened that one of my favorite mentors, Dr. Frank Kamer, who was a pioneer in facelift and nasal surgery in Beverly Hills, had a fellowship, and so it brought me back to LA and had me learn from this master that I worshipped, and so I came back to LA for the fellowship, and after fellowship, I worked with a number of different practices, helping with surgeries, collected some money, got a loan, and opened my office 9 months later.
So you did go straight to private practice after your fellowship.
Correct. Yes, I went straight from fellowship to private practice.
Good for you. And why didn't you stay in Beverly Hills, or did you?
Yeah, so I'm in the Los Angeles area, and for years we had two offices, one in Beverly Hills, and I have family in LA, and I'm from here, and the LA area in general, and Beverly Hills is a mecca for plastic surgery, so it was a natural place to establish my practice.
And then did you buy, rent, and where did you end up with the surgical center? You have your own in-house? How did you work that out?
Yeah, so I rent my space where my medical office is, and I have a number of surgical centers that I'm affiliated with. I don't own them or have any shares in them, and I just use them as needed. Um, and it's been an ongoing discussion with some of my friends who do own their surgical center, the pros and the cons of owning a surgical center. It's obviously there's a lot of pros, but there is a little bit of a headache involved too. And at this point, I've decided to go with the more simple approach of using a number of surgical centers and have others manage the organizational aspect of it.
California is a brutal place to practice. I just hear it over and over with the building permits, and then getting permits to do a build out in a surgical center is a whole other can of headaches. And I don't blame you for not wanting to participate if you don't have to, you know.
Yeah, in general, I've tried to focus my mind's energy and just employing the best techniques for our patients, doing the best job, and be as undistracted as possible with the other demands that our field requires.
Yeah. Are you doing more rhino or aging face or both? Is that pretty much what you're specializing in, those two, aging face and rhino?
Yeah, so as a facial plastic surgeon, I do a lot of rhinoplasties and aging face, which includes eyelid surgery, eyelid rejuvenation, face and neck lifts. And as would be predicted, as I've gone older, my percent of aging face has increased. And I really enjoy doing both of them. They're challenging in different ways and rewarding in different ways. But I would say in the last 5 years, I've made a greater shift towards aging face surgery, and those numbers are higher in a higher percent of my practice than I would say 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. And then do you do any recon or it's all cosmetic?
I do a lot of revision rhinoplasty, so some of those have a reconstructive component, but strictly reconstructive, I don't do much.
Mm.
Sometimes we'll have some, skin cancer reconstructions,
Mhm.
but I don't really market myself as a reconstructive guy, and I don't get those cases.
Okay. And then what about your team? Big team, small team? How are you set up?
I like efficiency, so it's a relatively small team. I have 7 employees, and that includes the manager, a number of nurses who do lasers and some injectables, and then others who are help me be more organized.
Any tips on hiring, motivating, firing?
Hiring is very, very difficult, and HR is an entire science in and of itself. And
Yeah.
there's people who make big salaries at big corporations, being their HR director or managers. What I've tried to do is hire people who have good personalities and a good vibe, because I think most people can learn the job description, but if you have someone whose personality doesn't really, they're not empathic, they're not nice people, those you can't teach. And I've tried to hire through friends of people who've worked with us. Now, um, I enjoy the luxury of not requiring a 20, 30-person practice. So as you expand your team, it becomes harder to do it that way. But that's what I've done is I've hired mostly people who know each other.
I have one. I used to do that a lot. I would always start internally and say, okay, team, who do we know that would be a good fit for us? Because they would know the personalities, both sides. And then also patients, were there any patients who absolutely love you because they'd be your best cheerleaders? But when you hire the friends or the family, on the other hand, when one leaves, often both leave at the same time. So
You know, every game plan has a pro and con.
yes, yes,
One con, for example, is because a lot of them are friends.
yep.
If a friend of theirs gets married, they're all like, "Oh, we can't work Saturday. We're going to a wedding, and I have to change the schedule." But and they're not all related. But I like that approach because I like trust, and I like knowing people who are basically good people, because I think the skills are all very teachable. Um, and so that's been my perspective, which is probably not scalable, but it has worked so far in our office.
I completely agree. I'll go personality any day over the competency because, I mean, if you have somebody with intelligence, average intelligence, you can process them. There are structures to set up and processes to make that work out, and anyone can learn the ins and outs of our industry. It's really fun. It's a fun study topic. but boy, you can't teach
Yeah,
compassion,
I think at the
kindness.
end of the day, many in the cosmetic plastic surgery field stop. They forget that we're still taking care of patients and having that empathy and warmth in the office from the very first time the patients come to the consult, to the sign up, to the post op period where they may have a rocky initial period is very important. So I myself will go to some colleagues' offices and have these very cold individuals who work there, and I'm like, okay, that's not the vibe that you want in the office. So I think that's very, very important, often overlooked.
Well, cosmetic patients, it's all about vanity, but it's also about fear. I mean, you're asking them to, cut into their face for heaven's sakes. Like that's a big deal. And they are looking for compassion and empathy. So I wouldn't skip that part. Regarding your providers, how is that working out? Are there any tips there for that? Are they well compensated? Are they on salary? Is it just bonus? How do you manage them? Have you had any issues with inventory kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. As you expand, I only have one injector and one nurse who does laser hair removal, and we try to keep we have one person who does clinical and the other person who does the consents and the financials, and we do it in the room to facilitate the transaction and to preserve privacy and flow in the office. And so I haven't seen any theft or irregularities. Having said that, almost everyone who has discovered things ex post facto is also they didn't know it was happening. So it's a very difficult topic. I think by being present, by having some sort of inventory system, you can minimize that loss. Um, as far as motivating and incentivizing, we have a couple of different models. It's both a per hour with a bonus if they meet certain thresholds. Um, so, but in my office, also a little bit of just a group vibe. We have a bonus that if we all hit certain numbers, it gets distributed. So I try to keep it a team approach because sometimes I don't want the staff members attacking patients sort of like a wandering person at a department store. I want them to work together. Um, so that's the approach.
I love the team that works together, celebrates together. The issue is you always have that darn big A player who is just excellent, and then you have the loafer, who isn't, and then it's not fair. And I don't know what the answer is, but you have to know your vibe, as you say, and make sure everyone shares that same value, and they come with that team spirit.
I use the bully pulpit a lot. So if I see someone who's not pulling their weight, I'll just pull them aside and say, look, I'm driving 100 miles per hour to get this office going. Everyone else is doing 55. You're doing 35. And I know this is my practice. I should work hardest. That's fine. It's my deal. But come on, you know, you should have asked that patient for a review. You should have spent more time talking about, you know, SkinCeuticals. So I try to use that soft approach as opposed to a more, I guess,
Disciplinarian.
numerical approach.
Yeah. And does it work?
Maybe. I think it does. I think in a smaller group you can do that. But if you have to scale it into multiple offices with 50 plus people, then you have to have procedures and protocols. So again, as you become bigger in scale, it becomes harder to keep track of things, and then you have to become a lot more protocol and systems oriented.
I would say no matter what, systems is everything, and the money is made in the processes. But it's the regular meetings for the leader, you, the visionary, constantly talk about customer service and who we are as a practice. It is repetitive and it's never ending because otherwise they just fall back on their habits. And we want to just keep reinforcing, we're a team. We're here to help patients look better, feel great. You have to hammer it in like regularly.
That's a great point. And I think that's where an outside consultant could be very useful because sometimes, as clinicians, we are so busy. There isn't that much room for the CEO aspect of it or the comptroller or someone looking at the books or someone looking at the profit loss on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and that gets sometimes lost in the whole productivity mayhem.
Well, and also you have such built-in motivation because this is your deal. Like live and die off of this, the structure that you're building. And for them, they need to keep reinforcing. You have to need reinforce to them why they're there and why you need them, and acknowledgement and recognition go a really long way. But I just always have to remember nobody is as motivated as I am to grow my business. And we just have to remember that.
Yeah, it's true. And again, I think that's where sometimes having an outside consultant come in every so often is a great idea to keep everyone on their toes and remind them of some of the directives of the business.
Right. Where are you at with non-surgical? Because you mentioned you have a couple of providers. Like, how many other revenue generators do you have in your practice minus you?
I still myself do non-surgical injections, this and that, because many of our patients ask for me, and I actually enjoy doing it, and I'm very efficient at it. So it's actually very cost effective, almost like being in surgery, because I have everything super ready and I'm pretty quick at doing this. And I have our staff prepare the patient, so I can get a lot done in an hour. But yeah, I have two nurses who do some injections and lasers. I don't do lasers, but the most of the lasers, like laser hair removal, IPL, some of the device-based treatments, energy device-based treatments are done by the nurses.
And is it a big enough revenue stream where you can go away on vacation and still have money coming in?
Yeah, it pays the rent. It's another revenue stream. In my opinion, it needs to be developed more. It's still in my practice, it's a one-man show, one-person show. But it does help. And when I'm in surgery, or if I have a half a day off, or if I go on vacation, there's still revenue coming in, which is important.
Right? I don't think it'd be fun to go on vacation if the whole thing stops, just
Yeah,
um
it's true.
yeah. What do you say is the biggest challenge of running a solo practice?
Um, I think managing people in HR, and I think we all have certain talents, and I've always put an emphasis on patient care, surgical quality, techniques, and a lot less on actually making money and the business aspect of it. Still to this day, I've always been of the mind that you do good work, everything else will take care of itself, and that's by and large true. But it's not entirely true because there are many um, business ideas and management techniques that one can use to make the whole process more efficient and better. And in the long term, I think that helps everyone. So I think that's where I've been a little bit more deficient.
That is why it's so important to get fresh eyes into something, just bring in a different perspective. Because when you've been at this for a really long time, number one, you get into a comfort zone. We all do, and you're leaving a lot of money on the table that you don't even know about because you just don't look at it that way, or it's not that interesting to you. Maybe that's not how you. As
Yeah,
long
I'm
as we
just
know
not that
that,
interested,
yeah,
honestly, which is terrible to say because at the end of the day, even though I love doing surgery and I love what I do, I also love going on vacation.
right.
So, so it should be very important. It's just for some reason, either by nature or by indoctrination in training and the people I train with, I just don't look at it that way. And I think there's a lot of surgeons who are like that too.
Oh,
Um,
many, many.
and I think I'm a big picture guy, but I think most successful businesses also have to have an eye on the micro.
I have noticed, I have consulted with several who think that way. Very not closed-minded, just not open-minded, They're not closed, but they're
No,
not open
I'm
either.
actually open minded. I just think that I can only handle so much, and that the rest, whatever it is, will take care of itself. But I think that's not the best advice if I were to advise a young surgeon starting out.
Well, if it's not gnawing at you or waking you up at 2 in the morning, then you're happy with your life, you know?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I like the vibe of working hard but not worrying. And if
Yeah,
that makes, you know, reduces your revenue a little bit, so be it.
right. What's one big mistake or regret that you have that others could learn from?
I don't have a big regret or a mistake. I would say some of the things that, as surgeons, we are constantly drilled and trained not to mess up, not to mess up, be safe, do things by the book, which is what you want to do if you're a surgeon. You don't want to, be crazy. But that same approach is not prudent in business or risk taking or entrepreneurship. And so there have been opportunities like co branding with well known celebrities for skin products where I was hesitant, or TV opportunities where I was a little bit nervous about the terms of that were provided in the contract. And so those are things that I may be a little regretful about, being a little bit too careful in non-surgical but business and promotion decisions.
Yeah, there's nothing easy about that. I hear you. Let's talk about marketing. How do you differentiate yourself in that uber competitive area you're in?
Um, well, I have the luxury of having been in business, or our office has been in business for 20 years. And so we have a tremendous groundswell of just word of mouth referrals, like old school stuff. Patients would bring in their daughters because I did their nose 20 years ago, or their cousins come in, or, you know, um, and I have high schoolers from different high schools in the entire Southern California region because when one person gets their nose done, for example, their friends like ask who did it and they come over. Um, so that's been um, a pretty good method. Years ago, starting out, I did do some TV stuff like Entertainment Tonight and Insider and News, and those were big, big boosts. Um, and lately, in the last couple of years, I think it's all about social media, and that's where I think our practice, we're not as active as we should be. I've always have sort of been a little ambivalent about doing, dances on videos and that kind of stuff. I wasn't on the drama dance team in high school. But I think there can be a path that we all can forge where we're comfortable with the image, but we can still kind of participate in the social media realm, which is probably where it's at right now.
Where are you at with influencers?
We have a couple of patients who are influencers that have operated on that we haven't done any kind of exchange whatsoever, and they were just gracious to mention it. I've had some influencers who wanted stuff, and I felt a little bit like uncomfortable doing a quid pro quo. I've had patients that I have done significant surgery on and procedures, and then I see them 6 months later getting a micro laser at some place and showing a before and after that represents $60,000 worth of surgery being represented with a laser procedure. So it's very gimmicky out there, but I haven't done any true kind of paid influencer advertising in our social media. I'm not saying it's wrong, and I think it's probably a smart strategy if you're starting out or if you want to really boost your practice. I just haven't done it because we haven't.
It's today's PR, you know? I mean, you get a good influencer that knows what they're doing and has a great following. One of the secrets is make sure their audience is your audience. One thing that's happened in our industry is that you'll have this gorgeous girl, but it's just men following her. It's like she doesn't have a
That
girl
is
following.
true. And the other problem is sometimes very difficult to decipher if they're true followers or bot followers. And And so that's one reason I've been a little ambivalent, because I'll have these random people say, like, oh, if you do this for me, I'll post about it. I'm like, I mean, that could be good, but it could be a waste of time.
Right.
Again, that's the conservative, careful nature creeping in.
Yeah.
Most people will be, that's a no-brainer, just do it, but a bit more careful.
Oh, I would vet carefully. I've heard all the stories, some good, some bad, most mediocre. Most are disappointing, like anything. If it hits, it hits. But otherwise, did you just give something away or did it turn on you somehow? There's no right answer there. What about patient taste and trends? Have you noticed them changing throughout the years?
It's an evolving trend, and obviously, I would say in the last 5 to 8 years has been significantly influenced by global trends seen on social media. And um, but in the last, I would say, year, I've seen a significant backlash and trend away from the impression of fillers and overfilled faces and kind of a hyper aesthetic approach to surgery and super high brows and very obvious things that may have been more in vogue, let's say, a couple of years ago. I'm also seeing a younger generation of patients, let's say the 17, 18-year olds, who are um, kind of rejecting what their moms are doing. So they're really very anti-filler, at least right now. Maybe when they get older, they'll make peace with it. But the trends, they come and go. I think the biggest trend is I think the biggest trend is that patients are seeing great results from all over the world, and their expectation is much higher. Now, that's good because it's pushing us surgeons to do a better job and to be more proactive in improving our techniques and learning from each other. But it's also bad because not every person, every patient can achieve those great results, even with the best surgeon and the best motivation. So it can leave for some disappointed patients who should not be disappointed, but feel disappointed because they don't have that level of improvement they see on some social media posts.
And what about though when the celebrities do some crazy things and especially in your area and then everybody wants that, like, the bigger lips or the buccal fat removal or chin filler. Gosh, there's so much noise coming at these patients. Do you often find yourself saying no to people or you give them what they want?
Well, if it's valid, absolutely, we can learn. I mean, these are the celebrities. They make their living from with their face and bodies, and so their image is very important. And that's why they influence people, because people figure if so and so's doing it, it must be good. And sometimes it is. Sometimes they're trendsetters. But again, different strokes for different folks, and you got to customize your treatments to each patient. So what may work for a particular person may not work for the other. So it's a mixed bag. I also advise patients that when you see a picture of a particular celebrity, first of all, they're beautiful to begin with. Second, they've had a ton of different work. Third, they had some of the best makeup artists in the world helping them, both men and women. Fourth, and that photo shoot, they had amazing lighting. Fifth, they took 300 pictures, of which they picked 4 or 5 that were amazing. And I'm not even mentioning any Photoshop or post production that may go on to make them look even better. So you got to one must take these pictures with a grain of salt and kind of um, keep that in mind.
Speaking of which, do you have any tips for getting your patients to consent to having their photos shown on social media and on your website?
We just ask them clearly. I know some practices will give a financial incentive. We haven't done that yet. Again, by some very traditional medical rules, that may be just slightly inappropriate, even though nowadays it's not. Most practices do it. Um, but we just ask, and we have 3 levels of consents. One is no, period. The other one is yes, if you can block my eyes or cut me off at the eye level. And the other one is just a full consent. Maybe another level where they'll say you can use my pictures for a medical or teaching purpose, but please don't put it on social media or your website for greater dissemination. So we write that in our consent. So when it's time for me to compile those pictures, I can be reminded of what is our permission level.
Right.
And that could be frustrating. I have a number of home run facelift results, and I'm like, please let me show this off. And they're saying no, and that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah. So would you say a lot of your marketing efforts in today's world, is it social media? Is it still SEO? Is it word of mouth? Like, can you live off of that? Like, what's your ratio made up of patient attraction?
Yeah, I think because of the legacy we have in our practice, probably 80% is word of mouth.
Nice. Nice.
Maybe not. Maybe 60, 70%. 20, 25% social media, and maybe the rest off Google search and SEO. I think with the younger demographics, it's mostly social media, and even older patients, they see a great eyelid rejuvenation or facelift or nose job, they're inclined to look into that surgeon or practice more intently.
You have a perfect balance there. At when you're at 20 years, I would hope you can say the majority are word of mouth. That means you're taking good care of your patients and you're not playing that one and done game. I mean, kudos to you. And then some social media and then a little SEO and a little pay per click, but gosh, that can be a real rabbit hole nowadays trying to pay to play,
It's really, you got to be like life itself. You have to see where you are
yeah.
and how you can, where is your market, where you are, and adapt. So this wasn't the game plan 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. And even in 5 years, it may be different because sometimes the word of mouth patients move and there's a drop off. So you have to sustain. So it's an ongoing process of every so often looking and figuring out what we need to do. So I'm giving you a snapshot now. Off the record, I'm actually looking at doing a bit more SEO and pay per click and more aggressive social media um, to expand the practice.
Okay. All right. Give me a crazy patient or staff story that you care to share.
Um, oh, this is a great one. So I would say maybe 10 years ago or 11 years ago, I had a really nice guy who came in for a facial rejuvenation consult. So he was like, I want my eyelids done, upper and lower. I want a brow lift, facelift, neck lift, chin implant. Can you do laser? And I was like, okay, let's slow down a bit. So I said, yeah, we can do that maybe in 2 sessions, and I'll make sure you're going to look the same and you're going to look amazing, just younger. And he goes, no, 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 I want to look really different. And I was like, okay. He goes, yeah, I want to look as different as possible. And he brought up a couple of pictures of people who looked dramatically different. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that. Lo and behold, 9 months later, I'm just looking at the LA Times second page, and there's a picture of this guy who was arrested for some sort of white collar crime. And I think he was trying to change his appearance so he wouldn't get busted.
Oh my God. That's
I kind of
crazy.
discouraged him. I said, it's too much surgery. And anyway, but I was like, wow. So interesting story for
So
the
I
pros
guess
of
he
living in a
couldn't
big
get
city.
anybody to do it, huh?
I don't know. I just saw his name because,
Wow.
he had a unique name. And I
Yeah.
was like, there you go.
Wow. Okay. I haven't heard that one before. And then tell us
I had
something,
another story too. I had
please.
a cartel member who came in and he had a hole in his nose from chronic cocaine use. When I say chronic, daily. And he offered me $250,000 to fix his nose. Now he had a huge hole in there, uh, almost an inch, 2 centimeter, unrepairable. And then he goes, but I got to tell you, I do cocaine every day. I can't stop. So I said, you know what? This is a very complex case. You have to go to UCLA and have a professor take care of you. I don't want to operate. I don't want to find out,
Did he tell you he was
I'm in the
cartel?
Sonoran Desert.
How do you know he's cartel?
uh, anyway,
He didn't write it down on
I
his
had a
patient intake
translator,
form.
and well, maybe he wasn't, but
He was
he
definitely a
didn't
used
look like he was in the
product.
car business.
Phew, that's brutal. All right. And so you know what? I know you've been pretty involved in meetings, like it's the association meetings, and I've noticed I was on your Instagram and you're co-chairing, several aesthetic meetings. Is that kind of your side hustle? Are you really interested in
Yeah,
that?
I love I was trained in a very academic center,
Hmm.
and we were required to present at all the meetings, and sort of it's fun. Uh, I enjoy presenting. I enjoy teaching, and it's also a great opportunity to learn because that's how we all get better is by learning from each other. And even the best surgeons learn from others and vice versa. And so I'm pretty active in both lecturing and attending regional and national and international meetings. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up now. Your website, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, is facial-plastic.com. And is there any other way to get a hold of you, like Instagram or email?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Dr. or Dr. John Vartanian, one big run on. Yeah, uh, look us up. We welcome, we have surgeons and injectors who come and shadow and visit. Um, and We're very welcoming and uh, have a very open ecumenical approach to sharing pearls with others.
Okay, you heard that. Now that winter's here, there's somebody in Southern California who just invited you in. So we'll see what happens with that. Dr. Vartanian, thank you so much. I will see you again at another meeting soon, I'm sure. And everyone, that's going to wrap it up for us today. If you would, please subscribe to Beauty and the Biz and leave a review if you feel so inclined. And then if you've got any questions or feedback for me, you can leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, where I offer a growth practice review session to see how things are going with you and how I can help. And you can always DM me on Instagram at Catherine Maley MBA. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.